Well, I know it's still going, but listen, good afternoon. I'm just so excited. I pulled the trigger early. But welcome to episode 1 of Beyond the Devastation. My name is John Perez. I'll be your host for this afternoon, and I've got a special guest today that's going to come on. We're going to talk about some things that are really near and dear to my heart. And but before I do that, let me give you a little welcoming music, little bass, as I say. But wanted to play this track to kind of kick it off, and but we are excited for this opportunity to talk about mental health issues. I know they're not popular, but we're going to talk about them. And really, this was a just how the genesis of this Beyond the Devastation came was. I preached a message. I'm a pastor as well here in Beacon, New York, and I did a message on Beyond the Devastation about how do you survive after a divorce? How do you survive after a loss of a loved one? And as we were praying to figure out what we should title a podcast, Beyond the Devastation, and what a timely event, given COVID, given the amount of deaths that we've had, all the things that we're going through. Now we get to talk about something that really is I'm passionate about. So Beyond the Devastation, episode 1. Today, we're going to talk about with my good friend that I met on a men's conference with my best man at my wedding, James Wallace. And this young man came and he really touched my heart with what the things he had gone through. And we're going to talk about it here now. I'm going to pop him up. There he is. And you can see by his name tag, it's Robert Ferrer. He's a pastor, but not only is a pastor, he's a father. Not only is a father, but he's also deals in mental health. He's a counselor, and his story is one that I think you talk about beyond the devastation. It really encapsulates being devastated,
Right.
and asking God a whole lot of questions, and didn't seem like I got a whole lot of answers. So
Right.
I really want to introduce today, really a friend in the ministry, but also a friend that I can call on to get some answers when I don't have them. And that's my friend, Robert Ferrer. Good afternoon. Welcome to the inaugural episode 1. You are the first guest that we have today. And we did a backstage and make sure that he could hear my bass, and he could. And I said, if he can hear it, then it works. And just
That's
let
right.
everybody know why I'm wearing the Pittsburgh Pirate hat. I am traditionally a crazy Met fan. My father, man, messed me up as a child. But anyway, see, that's beyond the devastation too, because they lost again this year. What else is new?
Right.
I'm honoring my favorite ball player, and that's Roberto Clemente, number 21 of the Pittsburgh Pirates. They should just go ahead and retire his number and get it over with. But anyway, that's some of that. But let's dive in. We've got 25 minutes to talk to Robert today. We know that we're not going to get it all in, but Robert, introduce yourself as the only way you can. I didn't even want your bio because I didn't think it was justice to what you really lived through from the devastation that you and your wife faced. So talk about it, talk about yourself, and then I got a couple questions for you.
Absolutely, Pastor. Thank you for having me on today. I'm honored, man, especially to be on the first episode. And I think this topic is so necessary for the believers as well as others who have dealt with trauma or are just emotionally exhausted because of what we're experiencing throughout this pandemic. But for myself, you mentioned a little bit of my story. Back in 2010, my wife and I lost a son who was born with a genetic illness, a very rare genetic illness that we've never heard of before, but it affected him in a major way where, his muscles weren't able to function properly. So he had to be on a ventilator. So we went through a year of him needing 24-hour care. And then at some point in 2010, he passed away. So this is a very devastating turn of events. And I didn't know how to deal with it. It's like so many others, when devastation hits us, we're not sure how to respond or what to do. But I was going through so many different emotions, mentally, emotionally. I was completely destroyed. and I didn't know what to do or how to handle it. And I really didn't know um, it was okay to be vulnerable in that moment, and not, not have moments where you're just not strong, and you're just feeling weak, and you're feeling exposed. I remember feeling like anything could happen. Like I just felt so unsafe when this happened. So, and that drove me to get into the area of counseling. So I went and enrolled in Liberty University, and I received my bachelor's degree in Christian counseling and psychology. And then I went on to get my master's in pastoral counseling. And then I started to work in different areas of human services, as a substance abuse counselor, care manager, different areas of counseling services, just to get more experience in those areas. And then I started my business as a Christian counselor and life coach. And it's been very, very effective, not only in helping others, but it's actually been part of my therapy as well, being able to connect with people on that level, and understanding that we must be able to go through like a comprehensive assessment and develop a treatment plan to address these issues that we're dealing with in church. Everything is not the devil, like we mentioned earlier. Some things we can literally strategically develop a treatment plan that fits us to address some of the issues that we're dealing with.
And just so if people, this is certainly Beyond the Devastation episode 1, and today we, as you saw in what we were posting on social media, we want to talk about today the biggest crisis in the church, and that's mental health.
Right.
So I wanted to bring somebody on that his own devastation of a lost a child. Look, we've always said that no parent should have to bury a child, regardless of age, right?
Right.
And he had to do that with his wife. You talk devastation. Many of us, Robert probably asked, where was God? Well,
right. Yeah.
Talk about some of the things you experienced going through this. You talk about a treatment plan. I mean, who did you reach out to when you went through this devastation?
Well, that's the thing. I didn't reach out to anyone. I went through by myself, and I should not have. I should have gotten part of a support group, or went into got therapy, or I should have reached out for counseling, and I didn't do that, and that wasn't good. That was not good that I didn't do that. It actually had some residual effects on me later, because I didn't do that. So that's what really pushed me to get into the area of counseling, and to really, really, really blow the horn and let people know that when you go through trauma, you need to seek out professional help. Like you don't need to go through that alone, but you need to really seek out help, and not, because if it doesn't consume you at some point, it's definitely going to affect you in a negative way, and it affects you how you interact with people. It affects how you deal with stress and anxiety. It could do major damage.
So when we see folks in the church, right? And because we were talking about it backstage, how to identify some of these issues. So when we see people with anger outbursts, when we see them with issues of this magnitude, there's, like you said, there were categories that some of these old pastors put it in. That it's a demon on the inside. No, it's trauma on the inside.
Right.
And what happens is pastors, we're misdiagnosing people because we don't know. And we say we know, but we don't know. We automatically put these folks into a category.
Right.
They sit on the demonic pew.
Right. Exactly.
Well, please talk about it. How does that affect? You talk about devastation. How does that affect the person sitting in the pew?
That affects them in a major way. And I think that's what you said earlier is so important, because sometimes people, act out a certain way, or you'll notice certain behavior that shouldn't be. And it is most times is a deeper issue. Most times is a deeper issue that's causing them to behave the way they're behaving, to talk the way they're talking, to act the way they're acting. So unless we have some kind of an outlet, or a safe place where they can go and kind of get diagnosed in a way, or to get some kind of a understanding, because some people don't even understand why they feel the way they feel or what is driving them. But to have a place that they can go to get that, to get knowledgeable about what they're dealing with, is going to be crucial. Like right now, I'm working with another church with a grief ministry group, a support group, and a lot of people who have lost loved ones are seeing the effects of how it's affecting them. And this support group is helping them to express themselves, kind of get to the bottom of what's making them feel the way they're feeling, and causing them to change their perspective so they can get help. And I think if we have that and we create a culture where it's okay to say, I'm not okay and I need some help, we can start seeing results.
So, question. Remember, we talked about it. We kind of preset this up. How to identify the issues, right? So when you see somebody who's the simple ones, they're sitting there crying all the time, right? They're moments of outbursts, or they're very the technical term technically, right? You know they're depressed, right?
Right.
And
right.
we and these issues are occurring in the church, right? So we're supposed to be the emergency room,
right?
But sometimes we become the morgue,
right? That's right.
I got to preach on that one.
That's right.
but we say we're the emergency room, but we become the morgue because we end up killing them.
Right.
Because we misdiagnose.
That's right.
So they're walking around saying, "Oh, it's only a demon. Oh, I got a demon."
Right.
You know, first of all, ain't nothing to be happy about. But as pastors, what can we do? Where can we go for help? Because I think that what's the best way to handle it, Robert? And since you're on both sides of the equator.
I think that we have to have resources available, places to direct people to when they need it, and just make sure that we create some kind of a understanding where people feel okay. Because there's been a stigma with mental health for a long time. Like people felt like that's something negative, or they feel like they're looked down on if they're struggling with their mental health. But if we kind of just continue to work on making it okay to get the help that you need for mental health or emotional health, where it's okay. It's not something to be embarrassed about. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's just a part of life. And then you feel more comfortable, saying that, you know what, I may need some assistance in this area. I might need some therapy. I might need some counseling. And you don't feel embarrassed. You don't feel ashamed. I think if we start creating that, that's going to be very helpful. And then we'll have, different outlets that we can direct people to where they need it.
So, we again, to reiterate, we're talking about, this is Beyond the Devastation, episode 1, the mental health illness in the church, right? So what it sounds like is we got to deal with the leadership to break the stigma of mental health.
Right.
That sounds like, from what you're saying, that's step 1, right?
That's step 1. Yeah.
I gotta get to the head.
That's right.
And let the head know that it's okay to get help.
That's right.
So if the head is, we know the head is sick, right? We know the body's sick, right?
Right.
So, but if the head is well, and he or she is giving out information to go see a guy or a person like yourself, it doesn't reduce who they are, but we should see it as an enhancement, not as a detraction, right?
Right.
So
enhancement.
I think that step 1 is we got to get our leadership to remove the stigma, especially in the Black and brown community.
That's right.
We see it as a weakness. We don't talk to nobody. Dad always said, buck up. Dad said, don't cry. And we just go out there and do what we got to do.
That's right.
We're killing each other.
That's right.
Because sometimes it's the trauma that we've got on the inside.
Right.
It has never been exposed or dealt with. So
that's right.
I think that leaders, here's your first step, and you're hearing it from a professional. If we, Robert, I think this could help us. I think maybe we could do a forum and invite leaders, and you can talk about how to break the stigma of mental health. Because if we don't, we're not gonna have an emergency room anymore. We're gonna have a morgue.
Right. That's right.
And once they're dead,
that's right.
You talk about do not resuscitate.
Right. That's right.
So from an identification part, step one, we first got to get the leaders on board.
Right.
And then it's got to
That's
be
right.
it's got to be a top down push,
Mhm.
right?
That's right.
So 2, I've got a member, and
Mhm.
without breaking confidentiality, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
How do I get them help?
Well, I think with membership, you have to have, like I said, an outlet and different resources that are available to membership when needed. Some churches now are adding that as an outreach ministry where they can have different therapeutic things that they can do, learning coping skills for stress and anxiety, learning what helps them to reduce stress. Learning that as a servant and any capacity that there is a such thing called compassion fatigue, that at some point you get tired because of your own issues when you're trying to serve other people. And more leaders are seeing it now that more than ever. A pastor came on earlier that I talked about who said, he literally said, I'm emotionally exhausted. I'm emotionally exhausted, and I had to come to grips with the fact that that's where I am, and I'm getting therapy, but I am struggling. He was able to say that I am struggling, and that's what we need to be able to say, and we need to be able to direct people to things that will help them.
So I want to go back to something you said earlier with regard to when the traumatic event when you lost your son.
Uh-huh.
You said you didn't get any help.
Mm-mm.
You didn't talk to anybody,
Mm-mm.
but you had a wife in the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did that affect your marriage, your relationship, and your communication? Because I'm sure it was hard to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely was a major issue, especially in our home. We both dealt with it. It was like the unspoken thing that was not really talked about, but it was still lingering, still lingering there. But we just kind of was just living our day to day the best that we could. It was almost like we could read each other's minds, but we wasn't really saying anything. So I think that was at some point, if we didn't come to grips with the issue that we were having, a lot of relationships break up over stuff like this. A lot of relationships lead to divorce because of stuff like this. But thanks be unto God, we were able to hold it together until we got to a place where we could say, okay, maybe we could get some help here, or maybe we could, go seek out some therapy to deal with this. And then on top of that, because of what we were going through, we didn't even realize that our other kids were going through too. They were suffering too. And I
And how
heard
many
stories
at the
where
time? So how many children do you have in right now?
I have eight. I have eight children.
Excuse me.
I have eight children. Seven girls.
What?
And then the
All
crazy
right.
thing about
Pray for him, everybody. He's got 8 women in the house, including his wife. But I want to leave the other child right now. We're going to leave that one. We'll just leave that one for later. But it was affecting all the kids in the house. This is
right.
what devastation can do, right?
That's right.
It affects 7 kids, your wife, and yourself.
Mhm.
And you're all not mentioning the child's name, right?
Right.
Nobody brings it up because it touches such a traumatic chord in the
Uh-huh.
house, right?
Uh-huh.
But when did you finally say, hey, we need help?
Well, that's when, it was funny you say that, because when I started getting involved in working in counseling, going to school for it, I started noticing all the available resources for counseling and how to get to it. And then I noticed the things that I wasn't paying attention to. And that's what we got to really look at. When we're going through our own trauma, we don't realize the other things that we're not paying attention to. One day, one of my children I got a call from the school saying that one of my kids was on the school bus, and she just starts breaking down crying hysterically. They didn't know what was wrong with her, what happened, and she eventually said that she was thinking about her brother, and she had lost a grandparent too. She had also lost my father-in-law, so she was thinking about it while she's sitting on the bus, and she ends up breaking down. And that's when it hit me. I'm like, wait, the kids must really be going through with this too. You know what I mean? So unless you get
Wow.
unless you get the kind of someone to talk to, you could kind of get refocused and see how this is affecting you, how it's affecting your family, and what do we need to do.
So that leads me to another question then. When you lost your son in 2010,
Mhm.
and well, by the way, I didn't, your son's name was
Robert,
Robert.
Robert, yeah, Junior.
So when Robert passed, did the hospital offer you any assistance? I mean, at the time, did they offer like any groups,
Um,
did they give you any outlets at the time? I mean, usually sometimes there's a grief counselor there, but I don't know
yeah,
if you,
they
I'm curious.
they do offer services. We didn't really take advantage of that. And even when he was going through his sickness, they offered like support groups where you could be a part of for other parents who are going through with kids that are having illnesses. And we really didn't really. I think my wife went to maybe one session for a support group, but we was kind of like no. And again, that's because of the stigma that we've always kind of known about back then about with mental health and different things. So we just like, no, it's okay. Quick to say, no, it's okay. We're okay, but we're not okay.
Well, no,
you know?
I mean, and you weren't okay. And I think that brings it, think about what you said is that because of the stigma that was attached to mental health in my community,
Mhm.
I didn't get the help that I needed, but yet I also, my kids were hurting too,
Right,
right? Because they
right.
saw the baby come in the house,
Yep, that's
and they
right.
saw when the baby left the house and the baby didn't come home, right?
Right.
All of
Yeah.
those things were there. And then you're going to your job, you're going to church, you're a pastor, you're holding down you're holding up that mantle, right? You're the dad, you're the pastor, you're the therapist, you're getting your therapy license, you're going to school, but the thing in the house really wasn't addressed, right? That's devastation in itself, because that's
Right.
hard to just, that silence, right? That's really hard.
That's really hard. And at the time, I'm glad I could say that I wasn't pastoring at that time. Thank God. I was in ministry, but I wasn't pastoring at the time because I don't think I would be able to deal with that at the time. But one thing I do say, and I noticed this also, is that at that time, it was so much time invested in him because of his sickness that the other kids were almost being neglected because
Wow.
everything was directed towards him. He needed 24-hour care. So we almost lived at the hospital at points throughout. So it was like the other kids, but we were more focused on him. He needs us. He needs us. We focus on him. But there are other kids here who who kind of losing us in a way because we're focused on him right now, which understandably.
Yeah, but it really brings us to that point when we're going through, we compartmentalize a lot of things, right?
Right,
I think
right,
that's the fancy word, right?
right,
And think about it. You had tunnel vision.
right,
The only
right,
thing you saw was Robert.
right, right,
And in our minds, sometimes, oh, the other kids will be fine. They understand. In the
right,
back of our heads, we say, they know mommy and daddy, what they're doing. They know that they're trying to work with their little baby brother. They'll
right,
understand. But
right,
then in their mind, they're
right,
saying, well, mom's not here for me.
right,
So
right,
now we've created not only the devastation of the loss, but the loss of time too, right? As
right,
far as,
right,
far as they're concerned, right?
right. That's right.
Because each child is individual.
That's
It's like,
right.
oh man, I didn't get a chance to hug mom tonight because they came home, they were so tired, you know.
Right, right.
And
That's right.
sometimes I've seen and heard, through my career in ministry, that people say they become resentful
Yeah, that's right.
because
That's
that's
right.
what happens when we give our kids preferential treatment.
That's right.
Johnny gets it all and Susie got Zippo. Well, that causes problems,
That causes problems. Yep, big problems.
big
And that's a
problems.
lot of trauma. That's a lot of trauma in a lot of different places. So that's why therapy is so important because you don't realize, like you said, you get tunnel vision. You're focused on what you think is most important at that time, which is understandable, but there's lacking in other areas. So unless you get therapy or unless you get some kind of assistance or help, then you'll find yourself with an imbalance. And anytime there's imbalance in your home, then you're going to develop other issues that develop, a
Wow.
lot of other issues that develop. So these things are like a lot of moving parts. Unless you address these things, they turn into other things. And then you can't really keep up with all of the issues that develop over time through one major traumatic event. You can have a lot of major issues that come out of it. So when people don't get therapy, they're actually doing more damage than they even know they are, because there's so many different areas that's affected, and it could be just from one major traumatic event. So you got to be careful and make sure that you're intentional. You got to be intentional about getting the help that you need so that you can kind of get that outside source. You know what I mean? Because when you're in the mode, you're in the mode. You're on survival mode. You're like, I got to do this. I got to do this, and you're not thinking about anything else.
That really brings up that great segue. I'm in survival mode, right?
Mm-hmm.
So think about, I'm listening to your story, and you were in, the baby was in survival mode from the day he was born, right?
Right.
Right. And then you went into survival mode
Right.
to do you poured everything into this child, right?
Right.
But then the devastation that day came when the doctor told you that, and then silence.
Right. That's right. Yep.
So
Silence.
Robert, I mean, I know it's been almost 11 years. Tell everybody how it was going home that night or that morning.
Oh man, it was definitely a major traumatic. I think when you say the word emotionally exhausted, that is a key thing. One thing I always tell people is that I didn't understand this until I went through this particular thing, what it's like to be exhausted in every way possible, physically, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually, exhausted all those areas at the same time. So it's like it's something you can't really put into words, but you can definitely say it's overwhelming, definitely overwhelming. So you're only gripping onto whatever piece of God that you have that you can hold on to just get you through on a daily basis. And that's why I think that that's so important to have some sort of outlet, something that can kind of help you to hold on to like the I would say your sanity in some cases, because you could completely lose it because of how overwhelming the situation is. You know what I mean? The situation is so overwhelming that it could take you to a place mentally that where you lose it, and when you get numb, you're in a bad place.
So, I'm trying, you've got 7 children at home.
Mhm.
You got the news, you go home. Now you're still dealing with it.
Right,
Now the kids have to get the news. And then you
right,
got to rip the Band-Aid off again, because now
right,
they've got to mourn, right? They've
right,
got to get it out of their system.
right,
And like you said, it really didn't hit you until the one was on the bus and completely broke down.
right.
So from there to now, your oldest is how old?
22.
How are they? I know that you
What?
got your license, but how did you finally get them? Where are they now in the process of this? Have they truly mourned the loss? Have they really got it to the point where they released the loss? Or how are they doing?
I say my oldest in my house is 22. I have an older one that's 26, but he's actually out of the house. But what I would say that they, and this is very key, what I'm about to tell you, they learned from us. So when we do that thing where we just try to just deal with it and move on like nothing happened, they learned that from us. So they wasn't really dealing with it until, like I told you, with the bus situation. Like they was just learning from us. So they was looking at what we were doing and was doing the same thing, which wasn't healthy. So they would like, so now we're starting to get more in touch with our emotional side. Now we're starting to get more, intentional about what we need emotionally. But at the time, They was just feeding off of us. You know, whatever we did, they was gonna do.
So if you walked around, I'm just use this. If you walked around like a zombie, they were walking around like a
They
zombie,
was gonna
right?
work on a zombie. Yep.
If you didn't want to talk about nothing, they
They
didn't
didn't
talk
want to
about
talk
it.
about nothing.
So
Yep.
remember, so when we talked about it, talking, about how do we address it, we got to address it at the head, right? So mom
Right.
and dad needed to
Right.
be healthy
Right.
so that the kids can see how it can work. So it's the old,
Right.
the analogy. You first got to put the oxygen mask on yourself
Right.
and then put it on the kids.
That's right. You got to
So
do that. Got
it
to.
it's really, and for anyone, it's in the chat. You want to put, I've not experienced a loss of a mother or father. Thank God they're still alive, and my kids I got 3 great kids and they're here. But for parents who've experienced this traumatic event, get help.
Right. Got
You
to.
know, in we're going to say in 60 seconds, right? Because we're going to cut this off here in 30. But Robert, so just so everybody know, Robert's coming back next week because we didn't even we're like at the tip of the iceberg. But
Right.
I wanted you to understand his story so that we can talk about, that's why I shifted gears, so we could talk about the other things that we're going to talk about next week, because everything he just went through, we don't do. And we do,
Right.
actually. We
Right.
do, and we don't get it. So, Robert, just to give everybody quickly, what's the one thing what's the takeaway for today? And then we'll come back and we'll talk about it next week.
I would say definitely seek help. That's the biggest thing, because what you do for you is going to affect your whole family. If you get the help that you need so that you can be emotionally stable, mentally stable, you get what you have to do to be healthy, you're going to be the benchmark for your entire family. You know, what you do affects everybody connected to you. So you helping yourself is actually the least selfish thing you can do.
And on that note, I'm going to stop him right there because we're going to dig deeper into it. We're also going to tell you how he came beyond the devastation. But I wanted you to get just a little bit today so that we can get you kind of where God has brought him from, because it's an awesome story. And here's my ask. I always tell everybody, share this. Because what he just said, get help. You need to get help. Robert, give them your website where they can find you if they need help.
Okay, so you can go to www.robertaferrer.com. That's my website. You can go there and get more information. I actually have a video that tells a little bit of my story as well, of what got me moving in the direction of Christian counseling and life coaching as well. And so you can go there to my website. And of course, I'm on social media on Facebook and Instagram, Robert Ferrer, LLC. So we promote getting help. That's really, really important.
And as pastors, I like working alongside of counselors because as we talk next week, I'll give you some more information about me. But today, I really wanted you to hear Robert's story. So really, I want to thank everybody that came on, that will share, that will send this to somebody else. Robert's going to be back with us for episode 2 next week, same time, 12 o'clock. And we will be diving deeper into this mental health crisis in the home, in the church, everywhere. So let's play a little bass on the way out, and we'll be good to go. We'll all see you next week.